The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the holy kind. Not the hush that falls over a sanctuary, and the spirit moves and every breath in the room holds itself still out of reverence. No. This was the other kind of silence. The kind that arrives like a cold hand pressing down on your chest. The kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck rise before your mind even catches up to what your body already knows. It was the third Sunday in October, Homecoming Sunday at Greater Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church. The Sunday we had been building toward for 6 weeks. The choir had been rehearsing since August. The anniversary banners were already hanging from the balcony railings, gold and burgundy, with the church's founding year stitched in thread that caught the light every time someone opened the side doors. The flowers at the altar were fresh. White lilies and roses, my selection. Because I was the first lady of this church, and the flowers were always my selection. I was standing in the wings just off stage, right? The way I always stood during the choir's opening selection, watching the congregation from behind the velvet curtain. I liked that position. From there, I could see everything. The deacons in the front row with their white gloves, the mothers of the church in their crowns and white dresses, the young people filling the back pews, because that's where young people always sit in a black church. Close enough to participate and far enough to slip out if the sermon runs long. I could see my husband at the podium, head bowed, lips moving in what looked like prayer. He always bowed his head during the choir's processional. It was one of the things that made people love him, Pastor Darnell Eugene Carter, humble before God, powerful in the pulpit, devoted to his family. That was the version of him the congregation saw. The choir was singing total praise. Sister Rosetta Williams had the lead, and her voice that morning was something that didn't belong to this earth. She was hitting notes that made old Sister Pearline Crawford in the third row lift both hands without even realizing she'd done it. The organ was underneath everything like a river. The drums were light, brushed, reverent. The sanctuary smelled like candles and someone's good perfume and the particular warmth that a room full of dressed-up people produces on a cool October morning. And then, the projection screen at the back of the baptismal pool flickered, just once, like a blink. Sister Rosetta kept singing. The organ kept playing. But something shifted in the room. I felt it before I saw it. A change in the air pressure, the way you feel a storm before you see clouds. The screen flickered again, and then it changed. I don't know how to describe what happened next in a way that captures both the speed of it and the slowness of it. Because my eyes registered the image in less than a second, but my brain spent what felt like 10 years processing what my eyes had seen. A hotel room, a timestamp, my husband's face. A woman I didn't recognize, her hand on his chest, his arm around her shoulder. Both of them looking at the camera with the easy comfort of two people who had been in that position many times before. Sister Rosetta's voice cut off mid-note. The organ stopped. The drum stopped. Jesus. That single word, from somewhere in the middle of the congregation, said in a voice so quiet it should not have been audible over everything. And yet it was the loudest thing in the room. A Bible hit the floor in the second pew. I heard it. It didn't look my hands had gone cold. Not cold the way they go when you're nervous, but cold the way water goes cold when you drop ice into it, immediate and total and spreading up through my wrists. A child somewhere in the balcony began to cry. Not loudly, just that small, confused sound a child makes when they sense that the adults around them have been frightened. I watched my husband's head come up from his bowed position at the podium. And I watched him look at that screen. And here's what I need you to understand. Because this is the part that broke something in me that has never fully healed, and also, somehow, the part that set me free. He didn't look shocked. He didn't look horrified. He didn't look like a man whose secret had just exploded in front of 400 people on the Sunday that mattered most to him professionally. He looked calculating. His eyes swept the room, not in panic, but in assessment, taking inventory, measuring what could be managed. And when his gaze finally found me, standing in the wings where I always stood, it stayed there for exactly 3 seconds. And in those 3 seconds, I understood something I had been refusing to understand for 2.5 years. He had always known the risk. He had simply decided I wasn't worth adjusting for. I breathed, I straightened my shoulders, I smoothed the front of my burgundy dress, the one I'd bought specifically for homecoming Sunday, the one with the 3/4 sleeves and the covered buttons that my mother had said made me look like a first lady should look. I picked up the microphone that was sitting on the small table beside the curtain, and I walked out onto that stage. Let me tell you who I was in that church before I tell you who I became. My name is Celestine Marie Carter, née Holloway. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, the third daughter of Deacon Harold Holloway and missionary Ruth Holloway, who served Bethel AME Church for 37 years between them. I grew up understanding that a church was not just a building and a Sunday morning routine. It was a living thing, a community with its own memory and its own wounds and its own particular way of loving people. And sometimes, its own particular way of failing them. I met Darnell Carter at a youth leadership conference in Atlanta when I was 24, and he was 28. He was already being groomed for ministry. You could feel it on him, that particular combination of charisma and discipline that makes certain men magnetic in spaces like that. He preached at the closing service of the conference, and I watched 300 young people lean forward in their seats as he spoke, like flowers turning toward light. I won't pretend I wasn't moved. I was very moved. We dated for 2 years. We were married in my home church in Birmingham with 400 guests and a reception that my parents spent more than they should have on. Because my mother believed that how you begin a marriage matters, that the prayers said over you in the beginning carry you through the middle. We were married for 11 years before that October Sunday. We had 2 children, Marcus, who was 9, and Imani, who was 6. We had a house in a suburb outside Atlanta, with a magnolia tree in the front yard that bloomed every spring so extravagantly that our neighbors would stop their cars to look at it. Darnell was called to Greater Emmanuel 7 years ago. He was their 3rd pastor in 4 years. The church had been through a season of instability, leadership conflicts, a financial audit that had shaken the congregation's trust. The pulpit committee came to us like people who had been walking in the desert and thought they might have spotted water. They needed not just a pastor, but a presence, someone who could hold the congregation together, rebuild trust, project stability. They needed a first lady too. They needed to see the whole picture. I want to be honest about this, because it matters to the story. I took that role seriously. Not because I was performing anything, but because I genuinely loved the work. I led the women's ministry. I started a food pantry that served over 300 families a month by our 5th year. I mentored young women in the congregation, many of them single mothers, many of them navigating circumstances that made me understand exactly how thin the line is between having support and being without it. I organized the children's ministry calendar, the homecoming planning committee, the annual women's conference that drew attendees from 4 states. I was not a decoration, I was not background. I was a working partner in everything that church had become. And I was also a wife who had been noticing, for about 2.5 years, that something in her marriage had shifted in a way she couldn't name but could feel. The way you feel a crack in a wall before you can see it. Running your hand across the plaster and knowing, somewhere in your palm, that the surface isn't solid anymore. There have been late nights explanations that were technically plausible, a distance in his eyes during conversations that had always been warm before. The way he'd started taking his phone into the bathroom. The way he'd stopped reaching for my hand during the benediction, which he had done every single Sunday for the first 4 years of his pastorate. A small gesture, private, one the congregation couldn't even fully see, but one I had always felt as a kind of anchor. I'd asked him once directly, sitting at the kitchen table on a Wednesday night. While the children were asleep, I had looked at him and said, "Darnell, is there something I should know?" He looked at me with those same eyes I'd fallen for at that conference in Atlanta, steady, warm, disarming, and said, "Celestine, where is this coming from? You know I love you. You know this family is everything to me." And I believed him because I wanted to, because the alternative was a kind of dismantling that I did not feel ready for. God has a way of deciding when you're ready, whether you think you are or not. When I walked out from behind that curtain, I was not running, I was not crying, I was not shaking, though something deep inside me was vibrating at a frequency I'd never felt before. Not fear exactly, and not rage exactly, but something that contained both of them and was larger than either. 400 people watched me walk to the center of that stage. The image on the projection screen was still there. Someone. I would later find out it was Sister Denise Patterson, the church's media director, who had been handed a USB drive that morning by a woman she didn't recognize in the parking lot. Had not yet figured out how to remove it. So it stayed. My husband's face. The hotel room. The timestamp reading 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night when he had told me he was at a deacon's retreat in Macon. I brought the microphone to my lips, and I said, very calmly, "I need everyone to stay seated." You could feel the congregation exhale, not in relief, in something closer to reverence for the steadiness of the request later. Several women would tell me that those 5 words, said in that voice, at that moment, were the bravest thing they had ever witnessed in a church. I looked at Darnell. He was still at the podium, his jaw was tight. His hands were gripping the sides of the pulpit in a way that the people close enough to see would later describe as a man holding on. "Darnell?" I said, "Step back from the podium, please." He didn't move for a moment. The congregation, 400 people, held its breath as a single organism. Then he stepped back. I turned to the congregation and I said, "Greater Emmanuel, I love this church. I love what God has built in this place, and I love each of you. What you are seeing on that screen is real. I did not put it there, but I'm not going to pretend it isn't there, because pretending things aren't real has never been how God called us to live." Sister Pearline Crawford, who was 91 years old and had been a member of Greater Emmanuel since before Darnell, where I were born, said, from her seat in the 3rd row, clearly and with great conviction, "Tell it." I had been told before I walked out, in those few seconds while the screen was flickering and the choir was standing frozen at their risers, that there was a woman in the vestibule. One of the armor bearers had come to find me in the wings. A young man named Devon, 22 years old, face ashen, hands shaking, and told me that there was a woman in the vestibule who said she had come to be a witness. He said she had a folder. He said she had been inside the church before the service started, had spoken to the media director, and had then gone to wait. This is where I will tell you about the thing I did, that people have asked me about ever since. The things some people called brave, and some people called cruel, and some people called the most extraordinary act of First Lady ministry they had ever seen. I asked Devon to bring her in. I did not do this for humiliation. I want to be clear about that, because I have had to be clear about it many times in the years since I did not do it to destroy her. I had no way of knowing at that moment what she knew or didn't know. Whether she had been lied to, the way I had been lied to, or whether she had made choices with full information. What I knew was this: she had come. She had come to that church on that Sunday with a folder of evidence, and she had arranged for it to be seen. She had made herself a witness, and if she was going to be a witness to this congregation, she was going to do it in the light, not from a hiding place. She walked in through the side door. She was younger than me, maybe 30, 32. She was wearing a gray dress, no hat, her hair pulled back simply. She was holding a folder in both hands the way you hold something that cost you something to carry. She was not triumphant. I want you to understand that whatever she had imagined this moment would feel like, it was clearly not what she was feeling. She looked like a woman who had done a thing she believed was necessary, and was now standing inside the full weight of having done it. I looked at her. She looked at me. And I said, into the microphone, so the whole congregation could hear, "Come up here." There was a sound from the pews, not chaos, but a collective, low, involuntary sound, the kind a crowd makes when something exceeds what they were prepared for. She walked up the steps to the stage. I did not touch her. I did not speak to her privately. I simply turned to the congregation and said, "This woman came here today with the truth. Whatever led her here, the truth is here. And in this church, we believe that the truth matters, even when it cost us." Then I turned to my husband. He was still standing behind the podium, and his face had gone through several expressions since I'd walked out. Calculation. Then something that tried to look like contrition. Then a kind of blankness that I recognized as his retreat into public management mode. The face he put on when a situation required him to stop feeling and start performing. I said still calmly, still into the microphone, "Darnell, you should go." He opened his mouth. I think he intended to speak, to say something that would reclaim control of the narrative, something eloquent and pastoral and plausibly repentant. Darnell was very good at those moments. He had a gift for them. But before he could speak, Deacon Harrison, James Harrison, who'd been a deacon at Greater Emmanuel for 22 years and who'd prayed over this church through the financial crisis, and through the pastor transitions, and through a building fire in 2019 that had taken out the fellowship hall. Deacon Harrison stood up from his seat in the front row, put his white-gloved hand on Darnell's shoulder, and said, quietly but firmly, with the full authority of a man who had been in that church longer than anyone, "Come on, son." And Darnell left the pulpit. The service that followed was not what anyone had planned. Sister Rosetta, when things had settled enough for someone to think about next steps, walked back to her microphone. She looked at me, I nodded, and she began to sing. Not the next anthem in the program, not anything that had been rehearsed for Homecoming Sunday, but something old, something that came from a place deeper than planning. He looked beyond my fault. Her voice was raw this time, not the soaring instrument it had been at the beginning of service, but something closer to the bone. The choir joined her, one by one, finding their way back to the sound. The congregation sat in that music. Many people wept, not from scandal, not from the entertainment of public drama, but from something that I can only describe as the particular grief of watching something you believed in turn out to be more fragile than you'd known. Mother Crawford came to the front and prayed. She didn't pray about Darnell. She didn't pray about me. She prayed for the church. She prayed for truth to be the foundation and not the ceiling. She prayed for everyone in that building who was carrying something they hadn't told anyone about. Her prayer lasted 11 minutes. And when she said amen, the sanctuary sounded like rain. I stayed for all of it. I sat in the First Lady's chair, the ornate, high-backed chair that sits to the right of the pulpit in most traditional black churches. And I sat in it, the way my mother had raised me to inhabit spaces that were mine, fully, without apology, without collapsing. The woman in the gray dress, her name was Alicia. I would later learn. Alicia Brenda Moss, 29 years old, a former member of a sister church across town, was guided out by two of the armor bearers after the prayer. She left the folder with Deacon Harrison. I was told later that it contained hotel receipts, text message records, and a letter she had written and rewritten over the course of several months, trying to figure out what to do with what she knew. She had reached out to a mutual acquaintance who had told her that if she had evidence of what she claimed, the church leadership needed to know. She had chosen the most dramatic possible way to make sure they did. I don't know that I would have done it the way she did it. I don't know that I would have chosen Homecoming Sunday, 400 people, the projection screen during total praise. But I also know that I had been asking quiet questions for 2.5 years and getting smooth, practiced answers. And perhaps the quiet way had run its course. The deacon board met the following Tuesday evening. I was not asked to attend. I was asked through Deacon Harrison whether I had any statement I wanted to make to the board before they deliberated. I sent one paragraph. It said, "Greater Emmanuel deserves leadership that is accountable to the community it serves and to the God it claims to represent. I trust this board to act accordingly. Whatever decision is made about my own role in this church, I will support any transition that serves the congregation's healing. I ask only that the truth, in its full form, be the foundation of every decision made in the coming weeks." The board voted on Thursday. Darnell was asked to submit his resignation or face formal removal proceedings. He submitted his resignation on Friday morning. The letter was read to the congregation the following Sunday by Deacon Harrison. It was 3 paragraphs. It expressed regret in the way that carefully worded resignations express regret, in language that acknowledged wrong without specifying what the wrong was, that asked for grace without detailing what grace was being asked for. I sat in my seat through the reading of that letter. When I was finished, I stood and I said, "Thank you, Deacon Harrison," and I sat back down. That was the last thing I said publicly at Greater Emmanuel as First Lady. There was a formal conversation 2 weeks later in which I was asked, gently, with great care from people who genuinely didn't know the right thing to do, whether I intended to remain a member of the church. I told them that I needed time, that I was grateful for 11 years in this congregation, and that my love for the people in it was not conditional on the outcome of any situation, but that I also understood that healing sometimes requires distance, and that I would be listening for what God had to say about where I was supposed to be. I took Marcus and Imani to my mother's house in Birmingham for 3 weeks. My mother did not say, "I told you so." She did not say anything that was anything less than completely useful. She made biscuits. She put my children in her garden and let them dig in the dirt. She sat with me on her porch in the evenings and let me talk when I needed to talk and be quiet when I needed to be quiet, because she was a woman who understood the difference. Divorce is not a word I had ever thought I would be intimate with. I'd grown up in a tradition that treated it with gravity, that understood it as a last resort reached after every other road had been walked. I want to say that clearly, because I think sometimes people assume that women who leave do so easily, or with satisfaction, or with the lightness born of having made a clean decision. That is not what it felt like. What it felt like was grief, long, slow, unavoidable grief. Not just for the marriage, but for the version of my life I had believed in. For the image of my children's father I had wanted to protect for their sake. For the particular exhaustion of having been the one who held everything together so carefully for so long, and now having to reckon with the fact that some of what I was holding together had never been as solid as I thought. I filed for divorce 6 weeks after homecoming Sunday. Darnell did not contest it. I won't detail the legal proceedings, not because they weren't real, but because they were the kind of real that belongs to me and my children, and doesn't need to be part of this story. What I will tell you is that my attorney, a woman named Patricia James, who wore reading glasses on a chain and had the particular calm of someone who had sat across from grief every working day for 25 years and had decided that what grief needed most was competence, was one of the people who helped me understand that dignity is not the same as silence, and that standing up for yourself in a legal process is not the same as being vindictive. I found a therapist. Her name was Dr. Angela Williams, and she worked out of a small practice in a building near a park. And the first time I sat in her office, I cried for 45 minutes straight without saying a single coherent sentence. She handed me tissues and waited. When I finally gathered myself enough to speak, she said, "That's a lot of weight to have been carrying." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Let's start there." I joined a different church 8 months later, a smaller congregation, an AME church about 15 minutes from the house, planted in a neighborhood I'd always liked, led by a female pastor named Reverend Diane Moore, who preached with the kind of anchored clarity that doesn't need volume to carry conviction. I came in quietly. I told Reverend Moore who I was and what I had come through. She said, "You don't have to be anyone's first lady here. You can just be Celestine." I sat down in a pew in the middle of the congregation on my first Sunday and sang the opening hymn and cried quietly the whole way through. And it was the most at home I had felt in a long time. The food pantry at Greater Emmanuel continued. I had built the systems well enough that it ran without me, which is, when you think about it, the point of building anything well. I heard from Sister Rosetta occasionally. I heard from Mother Crawford, who turned 92 and sent me a card on my birthday with a scripture verse inside that I kept on my bathroom mirror for a year. I heard from some of the young women I had mentored, several of them reaching out not to process the drama, but simply to say that what they had watched me do on that stage had given them something they hadn't known they needed. One young woman, Tanya, 26, a single mother of a toddler daughter, sent me a message that I have saved. It said, "You showed me that you can be broken and still be standing. I didn't know those two things could happen at the same time." I carried that message for a long time. I still carry it. Marcus and Imani adjusted with the particular resilience and particular heartbreak of children who were both more perceptive and more adaptable than adults give them credit for. We had hard nights and we had ordinary nights, and we talked honestly at the level that a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old can receive honesty. I told them that their father had made mistakes, that grown-up mistakes could change families, that it didn't mean they weren't loved, and that the shape of our family was different now. But the love in it was not. I told them this many times in many forms, because the truth, for children, needs to be said more than once. 2 years out, I went back to school. I had a degree in communications. I'd worked in nonprofit development before I became a full-time ministry partner. And I had always thought about pursuing a master's in counseling, the kind of thought you carry around for a decade without acting on, because there's always a reason the timing isn't right. There came a point where I looked at the reasons and could no longer find them convincing. I enrolled. I went to class on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, while my mother watched the children on the nights they were with me. I sat in those classes feeling, for the first time in a long time, like a person who was building something that belonged entirely to herself. I graduated with my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling 3 years after that. Homecoming Sunday, Dr. Angela Williams was in the audience. Reverend Diane Moore prayed over me beforehand. My mother sat in the second row in a white hat and cried through the whole ceremony, and told me afterward that my father, who had passed the year before, would have been so proud he would have embarrassed himself. Marcus, who by then was 12, told me I looked actually kind of impressive in my graduation gown, and Lonnie, who was 9, asked if we could get the good ice cream on the way home. We did. I am not going to stand here, in this story, at this distance, and tell you that everything happens for a reason in the way that phrase usually gets deployed, breezily, as a way to skip over the reality of pain and land directly in resolution. That is not what I believe. I believe that pain is real and that it costs something, and that no amount of eventual growth cancels the debt of what it took to get there. What I will tell you is this. There is a specific kind of freedom that comes from having nothing left to protect. For years I had been managing the image, managing the narrative, managing my own suspicions, because to let them surface fully would have required me to do something about them. And doing something about them would have meant the undoing of a life I had built with great care and great love and great investment. When that Sunday morning stripped all of that away, it took something from me that I will never fully recover. It also took the weight of it. I learned slowly, imperfectly, with significant help from therapy and prayer and the particular wisdom of women who had walked hard roads, that dignity is not a performance. It is a decision. It is the decision, made over and over, sometimes hourly, to remain tethered to who you actually are rather than to who a situation is trying to make you. On that stage, I did not maintain my dignity because I was exceptionally strong or exceptionally spiritual, or because I had somehow prepared for that moment. I maintained it because it was all I had left, and I knew, in some cellular, preconscious way, that I could not afford to let it go. I learned that institutions, churches, marriages, organizations can carry wounds that the people inside them have agreed by unspoken consensus not to acknowledge, and that the wound doesn't heal because no one is looking at it. It waits. It grows in the dark. And often someone who had no power in the situation, often someone who was simply in the path of the thing when it finally broke open, ends up holding the cost of what everyone else's silence accumulated. I learned that forgiveness is real and that forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. I have forgiven Darnell Carter. Not for his sake, not in a single dramatic moment of declaration, but in the long, unglamorous work of choosing repeatedly not to let what he did continue to organize my life. He is the father of my children. He is a person who is accountable to God for his choices the same way I am accountable for mine. What happened between us does not need to follow me into every room I walk into for the rest of my life. That is the truth I chose. It is still the truth I choose. The truth will come to light, even when we bury it in church clothes, even when we sing over it and pray around it and cover it with anniversary banners. God does not need our permission to expose what needs to be seen. What He reveals to heal, not just the one who held it, but the whole community that was living inside the lie. Stand in your truth. The rest will follow.